cyclical nature, then there's things we can do. We can look at it. We can identify what happens during the cycles. And then we can also predict that that cycle will begin again. That's all the Maya did here. They took their knowledge of 1320 and their knowledge, however they got it, I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate right now. But they took their knowledge of time and applied 1320, and they came up with this. And here we stand, right at the precipice of the movement into the final level of creation. The universal level, where the consciousness development, according to Kalaman and Lungold, is nothing short of conscious co-creation, where we create in whole the reality that we all are going to experience. Guess what? We're already doing that. Yeah. Right? To live with. We're already doing that because that's what, this will be the perfection of it. But get ready for this. Because if it's been weird living with changes every 20 years, we've got enough of a generational divide in here that we've all been living through some of this, right? We've all lived through the last 10 years, and you know personally the changes that you've undergone in understanding, in consciousness, growth, or not, whatever the case may be. We're approaching a time, Kalaman says March 9th, when change will start to take place on a worldwide basis approximately every 20 days. Really almost 18 and a half days. Just about. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And this actually ends, the end date of this cycle is October 28th. Write this down. Maybe you'll see some specials on the History Channel before long. October 28th, 2011 is the end of the universal cycle. It is also the end of the 13 back-tune, I'm trying to look for it but I don't have it, the 13 back-tune calendar we talked about earlier, right, ends in 2012, just a little beyond that, but it's still in this part here, right? Each and every one of these cycles comes to its final completion on the last day of this cycle, calculated to be, by our calendar, October 28th, 2011. Now, I am not much of one for dates, and at this point I will say I have presented as true as I understand it Kalaman and Lungold's work. Okay? That's it. I'm not much of one for dates, and I know most people aren't either, because they come and they go. For instance, December 21st, 2012. People say, Ron, what do you think is going to happen? I don't know. We can speculate about that here in a few minutes, because it's fun, and I hope y'all stick around and do that. But I'll tell you, on December 21st, 2012, what I'll be doing is the same thing I do every winter solstice. Matter of fact, every solstice and every equinox. I'll be with Binky out on the Llano Bridge with our two grandsons watching the sunset. And not long after that, really, December, this is the date, of course, that everyone pays attention to. It's got so much notoriety. End of the world. I hope you're realizing we're talking about not the end of the world, but the arrival of Christ consciousness in its fullest sense. But This date, Ron Binky, Echo Epic, Lano Bridge, may have another grandchild by then. Not long after that will come this date. The day after that will be January 1st of what year? 2013. And who says God doesn't have a sense of humor? 1320. At the end of the great cycle, after the completion of all the cycles of creation that we just talked about on the Gregorian calendar, as putrid and horrible as it is, 1320. Just like Pachel's prophecy. When they opened that tomb, 1260 years, said, look, you got a problem. This is it. But there's a solution. The solution is at the end of the cycle, 1320 years. 60 years from the day it was found, 1260, 1320. It all comes back to that. So I would beg you, urge you, please, investigate it. And there's a ton of things that we could talk about why 13 and 20 are significant. You just saw one of them here, right? 7. 7 is 13. When you look at the spaces in between. I'm losing my numbers here. 20 to the Maya, no way that we could go into this, represents higher dimensional mathematics. And it's fabulous stuff. Will entertain you for hours. And especially because your learning curves now are so short. Really. We have an advantage now that, I'm telling you, 10 years ago when I first started studying about this stuff and learning about all the history of things, I was learning, and I had a big learning curve to go over. It's been getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And what I find is that people who've never been introduced to any of the information, whether it's about this or any of the other kind of subjects that I like to study, people who first get introduced to it and say, oh wow, well that sounds interesting. And I say, all right, well I'll tell you what, check out maybe this book, these couple of websites. Tell me what you think. A couple weeks later, get a call or I run into them. They're like, oh my God, man, you were talking about all this stuff. And then I found out this and this and the next thing I know, they're schooling me. Learning curve is almost non-existent. And that's because the closer that we get to this, and I'll let you all go, all right? This right here represents this right here. There's a line connecting that. Beginning the Big Bang, when God, if you can imagine it, said, I want to experience myself in every possible facet and way that there is. And the universe was created. And since then, all of this has taken place in order for God to experience Himself, His creation, in every possible facet, in every way that can be affected by the 1320 matrix that rules our reality. Until, finally, all of consciousness was brought to such a heightened state that it returned to the original point that it began. Except this time, we don't have to have the destruction of the universe to have it. We simply have to walk into a new consciousness that awaits us. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for staying. Anyone that needs to leave, you're welcome to, but from now on, we're open up to any kind of questions that you want for however long Phyllis will let us stay here for a few minutes, and we'll get going. Thank you all again, though. Thank you.
Do you think the power of the trigger something like that in order to have everybody come into that collective consciousness after that? Because
something has to revert, I think, from technology back to almost a primitive state in order for this all to transpire.
Well,
I think
it's interesting because Jose Arguelles talks about in one of his books. It's called the Mayan Way, the Path Beyond Technology. And that's one of the things that we didn't really have time to get into, but is the collision between the consciousness development here, truth, and power. And you're right, something's got to go. It ain't going to be truth.
Something's got to give.
Something's got to give. So if it's not true, it's going to fall.
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe it'll be the monetary system, that dollar.
Well, certainly it's a fiat system, so that's got to fall.
Yeah, that's got to go.
So good.
Thank you for coming. Not sure what it would be yet. I'm probably fixing to find out.
oh, I'm going to talk to her. She wanted to talk to me.
Really immediate.
Well, hopefully, because of Carrie, we'll have it now. It's all recorded. All we got to do is dump it into my computer. But I'm going to go ahead and shut it down.
You want to put it on YouTube?